We're discussing the impact of COVID-19 on the federal legislature and interventions expected by the National Assembly to manage the pandemic. We had a chat with a lawyer and public analyst, Mr. Eze Onyechiri, who is concerned about the role of the National Assembly in the management of funds for COVID-19.
If it is the donations from members of the National Assembly or the ones from corporate Nigeria, if you recall, we've been told that the ones that come from companies will be tax deductible at the end of the day. So this is money FIRS should have gotten into the treasury that will be used for public purposes, which may now be forfeited. So if that money donated by corporate Nigeria is tax deductible, then it is public resources which should, from the executive, come to the legislature for appropriation. So to a great extent, I support the fact that we lack coordination and we need to coordinate better. Well, if people are just giving donations that are not tied to tax deductibility and they are simply trying to manage it on their own without it passing through the government, that's a different kettle of fish. But there should be guidelines.
Since this the COVID-19 pandemic was really entered into Nigeria, was brought to the fore, some have said that the president may be maybe usurping the powers of the National Assembly, overreaching himself in terms of some of the decisions and actions he has taken, without recourse to the National Assembly. Do you agree with this?
Not quite, because the president has more or less been missing in battle. I had expected that instead of the old colonial quarantine act, that the president should have acted under section 45 of the Constitution, which is in the fundamental rights chapter, that after providing our rights to personal liberty, freedom of movement, that section clearly says that nothing shall invalidate a law that is reasonably justifiable in a democratic society for the purpose of national defense, protecting the interests and rights of others, public safety, public health, public morality. On that premises, there should have been a proper framework that will have authorized this lockdown, this stay-at-home order, social distancing, and other areas, and also the palliatives and economic actions that will be taken. Such a broad framework law should have also set the clear parameters of how the president should proceed. Of course, the president is talking about amending the budget, cutting down. It must come to parliament for it to become legal and valid. Of course, I'm also looking at the big picture. The central bank has been busy all through the years doling out huge sums of money, whether it's 10 billion, 50 billion, but most of the big money is doing these days is in hundreds of billions, sometimes aggregating into trillions. I don't think the CBN Act envisaged a situation where the central bank governor on his own will simply combine with the duties of the executive and the legislature because he thinks up an idea, just approves it at his board level, and begins to implement. That's executive, approval, board, legislature. And you are discussing public money, because the money does not belong to Mr. Emefiele, the CBN governor, nor does it belong to members of his board. So, in essence, I believe that this money should have been pulled together, whether from the tax-deductible corporate sector donations, CBN funding, the real treasury funding, and then come together in this framework law. You do the palliatives, you do the economic part, you also do the human rights part, so that Nigerians are properly guided. But I don't think it is too late, because we are at the beginning of this process. My expectation is that the president and his team should be able to bring together, the ministers, advisors in different sectors for them to make proposals. They can now send it to the leadership of the National Assembly, and the National Assembly doesn't need to converge in that place near the trade-arm zone to take a decision. They can use, whether it's Skype, whether it's Zoom, IT frameworks, which young boys and girls in the IT world can design for them, and they stay at their respective homes and take the decision, make the necessary arguments that need to be made, and then there's a ruling. And then it becomes law, the president signs it, so that we have clear measurable indicators of what do we want to achieve, where we are, and how these resources will be spent efficiently. Otherwise, we are operating in a staccato fashion.